Hello everyone and welcome to a really awesome game that was played in 2012 in the European Club Cup. A lot of you have suggested it over the course of time, but the latest suggestion comes from Zarif Tamid Sheb, so thank you for the suggestion. I haven't seen the game, and yes, it features, well, not a spectacular move or anything, just a spectacular series of moves that really make this game unique. And it's probably better than the last movie you've seen, and it's definitely better than the last movie I've seen. I've seen the new Mortal Kombat movie, and I'm a huge fan of the franchise. I'm a big fan of the old school Mortal Kombat movie, and it was just I don't know what to say, but just putting that out there. So that being said, let's check out this game, which is nothing like the new Mortal Kombat movie. Without further ado, let's check out what's happening here as Anish Giri faces Maxim Rodshtein, and it's a really, well, it is just one of those games that you have to show everyone, especially your good friends at the bar and the library. And Giri opens with a knight to f3. So the Reti is on the board. We have knight to f6, c4, and b6 now. We have d4 by Giri, and now bishop to b7, going for sort of a Queen's Indian setup here. And this was well before the Alpha Zero showed us the way on how not to play the Queen's Indian defense, and here we have g3. Giri prepares to counter Black's light square bishop by fianchettoing his own bishop. We have g6. Black wants to fianchetto the other bishop as well, and now comes bishop to g2. We have bishop to g7, and both players castle now. So castles, and d5 now. Giri grabs more space in the center, and now Maxim proceeds with a principle idea, and he attacks this advanced pawn by playing e6. You could also play c6, but doesn't really change anything all that much. If anything, it's not as good for black. For example, knight c3, you could trade, captures e6, and now e4, and both white and black retain the strong center. So here instead, after d5, we have the immediate e6, and now knight to c3. We have e captures on d5, c captures on d5, and now rook to e8. We have rook to e1, and now Maxim plays c6 in this position. He sort of tries to undermine white's strong advanced d5 pawn, and not only was this a new move in the position in 2012, but it is also a move that has never been played again since. So let's see how Giri dealt with this. He played e4, we have d6 now, making room for the knight. The knight can now come, for example, to d7, maybe to e5, and bishop to f4. Anish continues development. We have c captures, e captures, and now rook captures on a1. On e1, we have queen captures on e1, and now again, you have to be very careful. The d5 pawn seems like it's weak, and it looks like you could capture it maybe with knight captures on d5, but then we just capture, for example, captures, and then rook to d1, and all of a sudden, how are you defending? There's no way to defend the light square bishop, and once the bishop moves, you're just gonna pick up the d6 pawn, and now it's trouble for black. White is up in development, and the white does have a better position. You still have to develop your knight to get the rook into the game, and white is just controlling much more space. So instead, after queen captures on e1, we have knight to a6. Maxim now wants to pile up on this pawn. The knight and the bishop are already attacking it. The knight will come to c7, and from c7 will add more pressure to the d5 pawn, and now knight to d4. Now the bishop and the knight guard this pawn. We have queen to d7, making room for the rook to come into the game, maybe rook to e8, maybe rook to c8, depending on what Anish plays, and now rook to d1. A nice centralizing move with the rook. If this pawn is attacked one more time, then you can move the knight, and you will add additional protection to this pawn, which is exactly what happens in the game. Knight c7, a third attacker joins the party, and now knight back to c2. We have rook to c8, and now comes queen to e2. Developing the queen, grabbing more control over the light squares here. As you can see, now the queen is much stronger here, controlling this, controlling all of this. So it's much more active square for the queen than e1. We have knight to h5, now putting pressure on the bishop, and this is where the fun really starts. Here Anish could go back with the bishop, let's say bishop back to d2, and if you don't know what you're doing, bishop to d2 is probably the safest way to play this game, but it would seem that Anish knows exactly what he's doing, and here he played bishop to g5, now leaving the c3 knight exposed, and okay, capturing on c3 does seem like an unprincipled decision because this is just a monster bishop, and once you get, if you trade it for a knight, even by winning the material, which is in this case winning a pawn, you will be left with your pawns on light squares and with nothing in between to help defend the dark squares. So here Maxim does go for it, bishop captures on c3, and yes, it does win material, b captures, and now knight to b5 with a double attack on the c3 pawn, and there's no way to defend the c3 pawn. If you advance the pawn to c4, just knight c3, and there's a nice fork here, you will lose material. So instead, after knight to b5, Giri simply played rook to e1, and this is you have to follow everything that's happening here, because the magic already started where when Anish played bishop to g5. So here rook to e1, giving up the c3 pawn. We have knight captures on c3, attacking the queen and the a2 pawn, now also still attacking that d5 pawn. Queen to d2, and now comes bishop captures on d5, grabbing yet another pawn. Because yes, you can capture here twice, but the knight will be hanging on c2. So here bishop captures on d5 was played, knight captures, we have queen captures, and rook captures on c2. Not only is Maxim up two pawns now, but he has a very active rook, and he's already attacking his next target. But Giri now has rook to e7, and this is a very, very dangerous move. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything, and it's really not, but it is. So here Giri goes for it, rook to e7. Now you have to react to this actively, because then queen captures on f7 check, followed by queen captures on h7. Checkmate is coming. So here rook to c1 with check, and this is a fine idea. If the bishop here grabs the rook, then the queen can capture on e7, so black would just be better now. So instead, after rook to c1 check, we have king to g2, only other good move, and now the way you save the game, queen to c6. And it seems Maxim decided to give up the a7 pawn, but he will save the game, and he will have an extra pawn. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, but why are you showing us this game? What's so special about it? Giri tried, Giri blundered, he's down a pawn, he's gonna struggle in the end game. Well, let's see what happens here. Queen captures on c6, we have rook captures on c6, and now rook captures on a7. And now you can see we have an endgame here, a bishop and a rook against the rook and the knight, where Maxim is up a pawn. So let's see how Giri goes about this, because this is where the fun really starts. Okay, the fun really started with that bishop to g5 move, but now how do you continue the game with black? How do you get the knight into the game? That's the real question here. This is covered by the pawn, this is covered by the bishop. You can't really go knight g7 to try and bring the knight back into the game this way, because then you just blunder the knight. You deliver check, and here you will have to give up that knight. So here Maxim tries another idea, king to g7. Now he will be able to bring the knight into the game via the f6 square, but Giri doesn't allow it. Bishop to e3. And now again, what do you play here? The knight is still unable to join the game, and without the knight being able to join the game, you're basically down a piece for the rest of the game. So here, knight to f6, he tries it, but now bishop to d4. Anish says, nope, that knight is not going to be a part of this game at all. We have b5, and now comes rook to a5, attacking the b5 pawn. We have rook to c4, attacking the bishop, trying to get the bishop to move so the knight can join the action as well. But now bishop back to a1. We have rook to c1, attacking the bishop, and now bishop to b2. And now the problem is, if you play rook to c2 to keep harassing the bishop, then just rook captures on b5, defends the bishop, and the a pawn is now winning for Anish. So obviously that's not happening. And if you play something like d5, saying, okay, but I also have a passed pawn, then just rook here, and you're losing the game. The knight is now lost. There's no way to play this, or you have to give up the rook for bishop, and then it's again lost. So here, after bishop to b2, we have rook to c5 by Maxim. and now the game is completely winning for Giri, but the move that Giri played is a spectacular one. It's totally invisible to the engines. It doesn't matter how strong your engine is, so feel free to put, or maybe it isn't. I've let the engine crunch the numbers to unimaginable depths, and the move is still elusive to the engine. So feel free to pause the video here and find this amazing idea for Anish while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on being as strong as Anish. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's A4. And A4 is just a spectacular idea here because, obviously it's a pawn. You can grab it, but if you don't capture it, then white will just capture on b5, and then you'll be down a pawn, and white will win this game easily. So here, Rodshtein captured b, captures on a4, and now what's happening here? Should Giri grab the pawn back or not? Well, Giri decided to trade rooks here. Rook captures on c5. We have d captures on c5, and now again we get this position where Giri is down 2 pawns. However, this is completely winning for him. So once again, feel free to pause the video here and try to find the winning idea while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not doing anything weird here. Don't do some king movements or bishop movements. If you do that, then you allow black to play g5. If you allow black to play g5, then he frees up the g6 square for his king, and that's it. Here you have to play f4 or h4. If you do that, then you cover the g5 square, and that's it. Black has no moves. Giri played f4. h4 also works. It doesn't really matter. Point is that now there's nothing you can do. Now if you force g5 to clear this square for the king, then f captures, and then the knight is pinned. We're just gonna win it and then easily win the game. So what you could do here is try to waste some moves, which is what Maxim does. He played a3, trying to get Giri to capture with the bishop so he can unpin and move the knight, but Anish just played bishop to a1, and it was in this position on move 37 that Maxim Rodshtein resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Really an amazing game, a masterpiece, if you will. And I haven't seen this game so far, so thank you everyone for suggesting it. And it's wow. Yeah, I'm going to show you why it's completely resignable, because I know most of you enjoy it when I do that. So here black has to make a move. It doesn't matter what move you make. White's moves are very clear. Just g4, g5, and that's it. We win the game. So if you try something like h6 to try and force g5, just h4. We do not allow black to use the g5 square. h5 or something, you have to waste a move, king f3. And now if c4, we can just, move the bishop back and forth until black runs out of moves. For example, a2, we're just going to play bishop something, then a1 queen, we can just capture that. If c3 or something, we're going to capture that as well. And now black again has to make a move. If he moves the king, then bishop captures knight, and then we have a winning endgame. And if you play something like g5, then finally f captures on g5, and on the next move, we win the knight and we win the game. So an outstanding game, and it's really hard to even imagine at what point in the game did Anish know that this was winning. So some say, the legend says that here when he didn't go bishop back to d2, where he played bishop to g5, that he already knew here, but that's hard to say. I mean, because if you just allow this pawn grab, it's very hard to say. Okay, the bishop controlling all of the dark squares in front of the black king is compensation in itself, I would say, but still, it's not easy to spot such moves, because the queen trade was imminent, and then here, I mean, it's just a wonderful game. Something that you can definitely use in your own games if if such an idea is possible in the position. Maybe you can give up some material to weaken some squares in front of your opponent's king. Then he doesn't have a bishop, you have a bishop, good things will happen. So yeah, like I said, after bishop to a1, Rodshtein resigned the game, and this amazing game was played by Anish Giri. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And here, once again, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you guys to use hashtag suggestion. I'm not gonna see all of them. I'm not gonna be able to cover all of them, but either in the comments or by email or on Twitter or on any social media, at some point I will reach it, because I just go, I load up the comments, I search for hashtag suggestion, then I list them, then I go through them, and then I check out the games, and then we get to see such amazing games. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that one. I would like to thank Daniel and Marin Hemming, Oscar Brent Kostius, Before and After, Gordon Gutman, and Geoffrey Rosenspan for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.